Good evening, guys. In the previous session, we created our first REST API. Okay, so here it is very simple to develop the REST API by using Spring Boot. Spring Boot provided web starter to develop both web and distributed applications. This web starter will provide Tomcat as a default embedded server. In order to create the web application in the Spring Boot, we are having web starter. Create Spring Starter project with below dependency, that is a Spring Boot starter web. Create the REST controller using @REST controller annotation. So REST controller is the annotation which is used to represent our Java class as a REST controller. Once we represent our Java class as a REST controller, in that class we can write the methods. Every method that we are writing in the REST controller, that method should be binded to HTTP protocol. Okay, it can be a GET request method, it can be a POST request method, it can be put and delete also. Once you bind your methods to the HTTP request with a URL pattern, we need to make sure every method is having unique URL pattern for that. Okay, and we run the application. When we run the boot application, that application will run by default in the embedded server. So Tomcat we are using as the embedded server. Okay, so now here yesterday in the last session, I created one class called customer class. So this customer class I'm using to represent the data. Okay, and I created one REST controller. In this REST controller, I have a method that is a get customer method. My method is returning customer object. Okay, now in order to test this application, we are using Postman. Let me go for Postman software and let me make a request for this REST API. Let me go for Postman and let me make a request for this REST API. Guys, give me 1 minute. Yeah, right, guys, good. I have started my Postman. So what is the purpose of the Postman? Why we are using the Postman tool, guys? Why we are using the Postman tool? Why we are using the Postman tool? Come on. It is used for testing our API. Okay, my API is started. Let me run my API. Right click, run as boot application. Right click, run as boot application. Okay, right. Then go for the REST API. Here we have get request with a /customer URL pattern. When I send a get request with the /customer URL pattern, now we need to see here application started, /customer is there. Go to this request, get request I want to mend localhost :8080/customer. When I send a get request to the /customer, I'm getting JSON data as a response. But what is our method returning here, guys? What is the return type of the method? What is the return type of the method? What is the return type of that method? What is the return type of the method? Object. But when I send the request, am I getting the object as a response or I'm getting the JSON as a response? I'm getting the JSON as a response. Now, today, let's understand a concept called media types in the REST API. Media types in the REST API. Here guys, consumes is available and consumes and produces will be available. Content type will be available and accept will be available. So when we are taking the input or when we are providing the output, we are going to deal with consumes, produces, content type and accept. Consumes, it represents in which format REST API method can take input. Okay, consumes will be available. Consumes will represent in which format REST API method can take input. And produces is available. It represents in which format REST API method can provide output. Right? In which format our REST API method can take the input will be represented by consumes. In which format our REST API method can provide output, that will be represented by produces. Content type, it represents in which format client sending data to server, client sending data to REST API. Now, content type represents in which format client sending data to REST API. And we are having accept. It represents in which format client expecting response from REST API. So I want to support multiple formats of the data. Now, when we want to support multiple formats of the data using the REST API, my REST API should take the data in multiple formats. My REST API should provide the response also in the multiple formats. Then we need to understand media types. We have consumes, produces, content type, and accept. What is consumes? Consumes represents in which format REST API method can take the input. Produces represents in which format REST API method can provide the output. Content type represents in which format client sending data to REST API. Accept is there. It represents in which format client is expecting response from the REST API. Now let us take, I have a customer class. This is a normal Java class. I want to represent this class as a binding class also. For that, I will go for @XML root element. When I use @XML root element, then it can be converted to Java object can be converted to XML and XML can be converted to Java object. So if you want to work with only JSON, no annotation is required. But if you want to work with XML data, this Java class should be represented as a binding class. We discussed in the JAXB concept. Now, a Java class should be represented as a binding class. Then only we can perform marshalling and unmarshalling on this Java class. Now, here I have get mapping. The get mapping, this method is used to send the data to the client. Client will send a get request to get the data from the server. In which format client is getting the response now? JSON. Now, sometimes I want to get the data in the JSON format. Sometimes I want to get the data in the XML format. Okay. Now here I need to specify the URL pattern like this. Get mapping value is equal to /customer. And here produces is equal to, I need to specify application /XML, comma, application /JSON. So what I am telling here, this get method can produce the response in the XML format or JSON format. Two approaches, two options I am giving for my client. Client can take the customer data in the XML format or client can take the data in the JSON format. My method will produce the data in two formats. Clients can decide in which format they want the response. Now, if I want to convert the customer object to the customer XML, this class should be a binding class. To represent this class as a binding class, I am using root element, JAXB. So if you are using Java 1.8, JDK contains JAXB. No need to add any dependency. Suppose your project is using Java 9 or 11 or 17, then JAXB dependencies you need to add in the pom.xml. Okay, let me stop my project. Right click, run as boot application. Now I am going to run my Spring Boot application. I want to test my Spring Boot application. Clear the console. Take this URL. Now go to browser. Let me check. When I send a GET request to the URL, what response I am going to get. Last time we got the data as a JSON, but today what response I am getting? Guys, today what response I am getting from the browser? Today I'm getting XML response in the browser, but actually what my method is returning? My method is returning a object. So the object is coming as a response. Object is converted to XML and XML coming as a response. Object is converted to XML and XML coming as a response. Same request if I send from the postman. Yes. Now can you see what response I'm getting now? What response I'm getting now? XML response I'm getting now. In the browser also, when I send a request, I'm getting the XML response. In the postman also, when I send a request, I'm getting the XML as a response. So how I specified the produces format? Produces is equal to application/XML, application/JSON. This method can produce the data in the XML format as well as in the JSON format. Now, clients can ask XML data or JSON data. How client can ask XML data or JSON data? Accept. What is the meaning of accept? It represents in which format client expecting response from the REST API. This content type and accept, these are the HTTP headers. Now go to browser, go to postman. Headers are available. Let me add a header in the postman with a accept. I'm writing a header called accept. Key value. I'm specifying application/JSON. I'm sending a request to the client with a header called accept. What is the value? Application/JSON. Send the request. Now, in which format I got the response? In which format I got the response? In the JSON format. How server is understanding that I am expecting a JSON response? Because in the request, I'm sending one header called accept header. Accept header is a metadata. Client is sending a GET request to the server to get the customer data. At the server side, the method is available to return the customer object. Now, client is sending a request with the accept header. Now, what the Spring Boot understood? Okay, I got a request with the accept is JSON. That means client is expecting the JSON data. Then Spring Boot will use Jackson API, will convert this customer object to customer JSON, is sending the customer JSON as a response. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? Why I got the JSON? Now suppose some clients want the XML. Accept application/XML. Accept application/XML. Click on send. Now I got the XML data as response. So now can I say my REST API is supporting for multiple formats of the output? Can I say my REST API is supporting for multiple formats of the output? My REST API is supporting for multiple formats of the output. How I am representing that? My REST API can produce XML data or JSON data by using produces. By using produces. Now here, guys, why I am returning the object? Why I am not converting the object to the JSON data, and why I am not returning the JSON directly from my method? If I write the logic to convert to the JSON, that will become tightly coupled with only JSON. That will become tightly coupled with JSON. So can I write the Jackson logic here, and can I convert this object to JSON, and can I return the JSON directly from the method? Yes, I can do it. If I write the logic for that, then what is the problem? If I write the logic for that, then what is the problem, guys? If I write the logic for this, then what is the problem? Tightly coupled. Always it will return only JSON. If I write the JAXB logic in the method, if I convert this object to XML, if I return the XML data from the method, then what is the problem? If I write the logic of JAXB and if I return the XML, then what is the problem? Then what is the problem? Come on. It is tightly coupled with only XML data or JSON data. So that's why my method is returning the object or my method is returning JSON. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. My method is tightly coupled or my method is loosely coupled? My method is loosely coupled. If a client wants XML, my method will send the XML data as a response. If a client wants JSON, my method will convert that to the JSON and will send the JSON data. Now, do you understand why I am taking object as a return type? Now, do you understand why I am taking object as a return type? Yes, I'm not writing the Jackson logic or Jaxby logic. If I write the Jackson logic or Jaxby logic, my method will be tightly coupled with only one format. I want my method to be loosely coupled. Now, client will send a request. Assume that here, this is my REST API. My REST API having a method, a GET request method is available. So this REST API having one method, get a customer. My method is having a get customer. Here for my method, I have given both XML and JSON as a produce as format. For this method, I have given XML and JSON as a produce as format. So what is the meaning of that? Clients can take XML as a response. Client can take JSON as a response. Now this is, assume that client 1 and assume that this is a client 2. Client 1 is available and client 2 is available. Client 1 is available and client 2 is available. This client is sending a GET request to the REST API. And this client is sending a request with accept is equal to JSON. Accept is equal to JSON. What is the meaning of accept? This client is sending an instruction to the REST API. Hey, REST API, I want JSON response. I want JSON response. Now what this REST API has done? This REST API has sent JSON response to that client because of the accept header. Now what is the accept header is representing? The accept header representing client 1 is expecting the JSON response from the REST API. Now here we are having another client. This client is sending the request to the same REST API method, but this client is sending the accept with the XML. This client is sending accept with the XML. When this client 2 send the accept with the XML, then what it is representing? This client is giving instruction to the REST API. I want XML response. Then what our REST API will do? In this scenario, our REST API will convert the customer object to XML and it will send the XML response to this client. So now my REST API is tightly coupled with only one format, or my REST API is loosely coupled with the format of the data? Here, if I write the logic to convert the object to JSON, then that will become tightly coupling with only JSON. If I write the logic with Jaxby and return the XML, that will be tightly coupled with only XML. So that's why I'm writing my method with the object return type, so that some clients can take XML as a response. Some clients will take JSON as a response. As a programmer, do I need to write the logic to convert the object to XML and JSON, or it will be taken care by my REST API, Spring Boot? Do I need to convert the object to XML or JSON, or it will be taken care by my Spring Boot? Yes. Now, can you tell me what is the purpose of produces? Can you guys tell me what is the purpose of produces? Produces will be representing how many formats of data you are supporting. I have a object. I have a object. Object can be converted to XML Object can be converted to JSON. My method can produce XML as a response. My method can produce JSON as a response. Now it is the client responsibility which data they want. First client is sending a request with accept is equal to JSON. What is the meaning of accept? Here, accept represents content type header. Content type header. And accept header. Content type header, it represents in which format client is sending data to the REST API. What is the accept header? It represents in which format client expecting response from the REST API. Consumes, in which format REST API can take the input. Now, in this method, REST API taking any input or REST API only producing the output? It is a GET request method. Client will send a GET request to take the data from the REST API. So this method is not taking any input. This method is only producing the output. So client is sending a request for the GET customer. It is taking the customer data. Assume that the customer data will come from the database. The customer data will come from the database, and that customer object I am returning. Object will not go to the client. Object will be converted to XML or JSON. Depends upon the accept. So depends upon the accept. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? When the client is sending accept with JSON, see here, if the client is sending accept with application/XML and send the request, customer object converted to customer XML. If a client is sending accept header, here it is using when a client is sending accept is equal to JSON, my REST API will convert the customer object to JSON by using Jackson API and returning the JSON response. When a client is sending a request with accept is equal to XML, my REST API will use Jaxb API internally, will convert that customer object to XML, will send the response to the client in the XML format. So my REST API is tightly coupled with the client requirement, or it is loosely coupled. Here, value represents URL pattern. This method I want to bind it to a GET request with /customer URL pattern. Value representing the URL pattern of our REST API method. Value is representing the URL pattern. Produce is representing in which format you want to provide the response. One is application/XML, application/JSON. Are you clear with my point? Now, similarly, I want to develop one method which is binded to post request. We have seen the GET request method. What is the purpose of GET request? When we will go for the GET request method, guys? When client want to get some data from the server, then client will send a GET request. Now, similarly, I want to develop a method with the post request. Okay. Public Spring add customer. I want to take customer object as an input. Okay. Now I am writing system.out.println customer object I am printing on the console. Here, logic to insert customer in DB. In future, I will insert the customer record in the database. Now, here, I don't want to send the 200 as a status code. I want to send 201 as a status code. Whenever a record is inserted, we will send the status code as 201. Okay. Return new response entity. Return new response entity, body and status. Body I will say customer inserted, customer saved. Status code HTTP status dot created. HTTP status dot created. So what is the meaning of HTTP status dot created? That is representing 201. HTTP status dot created, that is representing 201. Customer record saved and it is saved and reinserting the record in the database and it will return the status as created. What is the meaning of created? 201. I want to bind this to post mapping, post request, right? When I am binding this to post request, I want to specify the URL pattern. I want to specify the URL pattern. Value is equal to /customer. Here I am giving the /customer. Here also I am giving the /customer. Sir, how can we give same URL for two methods? The URL pattern is same, but it is binded to get request. It is binded to post request. The mapping is different. Mapping is different. Okay. Now customer. Here my REST API method taking object as an input. Do you think that client will send object as input for the REST API, or clients will send XML or JSON data as input for the REST API? Client will send JSON as input or XML as input, or they will send object as an input. Come on. Client will not send the object as an input. Are you guys clear with my point? Client will not send the object. Client will send the XML data or JSON data. In which format clients can send the data? I can consume either XML data as an input. I can consume JSON data as an input. Okay, guys. Value is representing URL pattern. Consumes representing application /XML, application /JSON. What is the difference between consumes and produces, guys? What is the difference between consumes and produces now? What is the difference between consumes and produces now? What is the difference between consumes and produces now? Consumes will represent in which format my REST API method can take the input. Here, add customer. Client will send a request to add the customer data. Client will send a request to add the customer data. Client can send customer data in the XML format. Client can send customer data in the JSON format. How I am telling that client can send XML data or JSON data? By using consumes. Consumes is equal to application /XML, application /JSON. Add customer. Now what I am returning from this? Am I returning an object? Am I returning a string as a response? I'm returning string as a response. Then what is the produces from this method? The produce from this method is text /plain. So this method is providing plain text as a response. And this method is expecting the data in the XML format or JSON format. Consumes and produces. Consumes represents in which format this REST API method can take the input. It can be XML or it can be JSON. Produces text plain. This method is returning simple string. It is just a customer saved message. This message I can't convert to XML. This message I can't convert to JSON. Okay, it is a plain text. So to represent the plain text as a response, we are using produces, text /plain. To represent the input, I am using consumes. Okay, guys. Now, in which format client can send the request to this method? In which format client can send the request data to this method? Client can send the request data in the XML format or in the JSON format, because my method can consume XML data as well as JSON data. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to follow me? Now, I want to make a post request. I want to make a post request. So change the method to post and go to body. Go to body. In this, I'm keeping the customer data in the XML format. Okay, guys, I'm removing the header part and body. Whenever I'm sending a get request, body will not be available. When we are sending a post request, the body will be available. Post localhost colon 8080/customer body. In the body, I'm keeping customer data. In the body, I'm keeping the customer data. Now stop this application and run this. Run as boot application. Let's observe whatever the data that the client is sending, are we able to receive the data to the REST API in the object format or not? What my method is expecting, guys? What my method is expecting? My method is expecting object. What client is sending? XML. How my application will know that client is sending XML? Here we need to write one header content type, that is application/XML. I'm setting one header. What is the header? Content type. And in the body, XML data. Content type application/XML, body contains the XML data. Click on send request. Now I send the request. I got the body, customer saved, 201 created. Go to this, go to the console. Guys, that customer object is there. We need to override the toString method to see the content of the object. Let me override the toString method. Really, did we get customer XML in the form of customer object or not? Let me stop the server. I changed that code. Let me run this. Run as boot application. Run as boot application. Okay, guys. Boot application. Now go to Postman. I'm giving the header content type as XML. What is the meaning of content type? It represents in which format client sending data to REST API in request body. In request body. Now I'm setting the content type as XML. My body contains XML. Click on send. Customer saved 201 status code. Go to here. Data is going to the server. My data is not going to the server. Email is null, name is null, gender is null. So data is binded to the Java object. Whatever the data customer is sending in the XML format, that the data is binded to Java object, or that the data is not binded to Java object? Not binded. The object is displaying all the null values. The reason is, for this REST API, we need to tell that this customer object will get the data from the request body in the request. We need to specify one annotation called @request body annotation. When I specify @request body, then my dispatcher servlet will understand request is coming with the body. In the body, XML data will be available. Take that XML data, convert into Java object. So we need to specify request body annotation because client is sending the data in the request body. REST API should take the data from the request body. For that, we will use @request body annotation. Run my application now. Run my application. Application started. Go to Postman, send the request. I got the response. Go to console. Now can you see whatever the data I have sent in the XML format? Is it binded to Java object or not? Is it binded to Java object or not? Yes. Why my REST API method taking object as a parameter? Why not XML as parameter? Why not XML data? Why not JSON data? Why not XML data? Why not JSON data? If it is taking XML data as input directly, that is tightly coupled with only XML. If it is taking JSON data as the input, it will become tightly coupled with only JSON. So that's why my method is taking object. So now, whenever client send a XML with the header as application/XML content type, then the REST API will use JAXB API, will convert that XML data to Java object and will pass the Java object as a parameter for the method. Are you clear? Now, similarly, Can I send JSON data as a REST input, guys? Application/JSON content type. Go to body. Instead of this, I want to send the JSON data as a response. Let me get the JSON data first. Remove this /customer. I got the XML as input. Accept. Accept represents in which format I want the response. JSON. I got the JSON data. Now, same JSON I will send it to the post request in the body. Okay. Application/JSON. Got my point. Now, I want to send post request with accept is JSON. Sorry, content type is JSON. And the body contains JSON data. Now go to this REST API, clear the console, and send a request. Observe carefully. I am making a request with the post. This is the URL pattern. Headers. What is the header I am sending? Content type, application/JSON. What is the content type is representing? It represents in which format client sending data to the REST API in the request body. Client is sending data to the server in the JSON format. In the body, JSON data available. Click on send. We got the response as a customer saved 201 created. Now see that customer data stored into Java object. So object to JSON, object to XML, that will be taken care by Spring Boot. You no need to write that logic of the Jackson and Jaxby manually. You just need to use the objects in your methods, because when I use object, my method will be loosely coupled with the client request. If a client send XML, XML will be converted to object. If a client send JSON, JSON will be converted to object. If a client want XML, this object will be converted to XML. If a client want JSON, this object will be converted to JSON format. Are you guys able to understand these four concepts, guys? If you understand these four concepts, then REST API development is easy. Consumes, produces, content type, accept header. Consumes represents in which format REST API method can take the input. Produces represents in which format REST API method can provide the output. Content type header, it represents in which format client sending data to REST API in the request body. Accept header, it represents in which format client expecting response from the REST API. Are you guys clear? Look at this REST API. I created one customer REST controller. I have taken one method called get customer. This method is binded to get request with /customer URL. As it is a get request, it will provide some response to the client. In which format it will provide the response? We are represented by using produces. Produces is equal to application/XML, application/JSON. So client can take the data in the XML format or JSON format. How my method will know in which format client is expecting? Client will send accept header. Accept header will represent in which format client expecting the response. Based on the accept header, this object will be converted to either XML or JSON. And similarly, here I have a method. This method is binded to post request. So to bind the method to get request, I'm using get mapping. To bind the method to post request, I'm using post mapping. Value is equal to /customer. Consumes application/XML, application/JSON. This method can take the input in the XML or JSON format. And this method is producing text/plain. It is producing the plain text. Okay. Now, client can send the data in the XML or JSON. But here, my method is taking object. Why? Client can send any format. That format will be converted to object. And object data, I need to take the data from the request body and store into object. That's why I'm writing annotation called @request body. So here we can write the logic to insert the data into database, and we are returning the success message with the status code. Customer saved, status code is created. 201 will represent record is created. Are you clear with this REST API, get request method and post request method? Difficult or easy? Guys, it is difficult or easy? Yeah. Before going to start the concept, next concept, guys, any doubt anybody having on this? Anybody having any doubt on this?
Sir, what is the use of the request body annotation? I'm not understanding properly, sir.
Yes, sir.
Request body annotation is used to take the data from the request body and store into object. It is used to represent that this object data will come from the request body, take the data from the body and store into Java object. My method is having a parameter, right? So that object should have some data. Who will give the data to that object? From where the data is coming for that object? Sending the data in the body, right? So that data, we need to represent that data is coming from the request body. So for that, we are going to use that. You got my point?
Hello, sir.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, why we use REST controller instead of simple controller?
Sir, if you go for simple controller, right, whatever the method is returning, that will be considered by default as a view name. You got my point? When you go for simple controller, whatever that you are returning from the method, that will be considered as a simple view name. Now I am not returning the simple view. I am returning the object that should be represented as a response.
Okay,
you got
sir.
it?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Hello,
So
sir.
to be simple, controller plus response body will represent as a REST controller. Controller plus response body will represent as a REST controller. Now, I don't want to return the view page from this method. I want to return the response directly, either in the JSON format or in the XML format. For that, I have used it. You
Sir,
got
in
it?
case,
Okay,
in case REST controller, if I want to use this view template, how I can use?
No, sir. In the REST controller, purely for the B2B communication, you cannot use view pages with the REST controller. REST controller will give you the response either in the text format or JSON format or XML format, not the presentation.
Okay.
It will not give you the presentation. And one more small update for you guys. I have changed the Zoom link for the tomorrow session. It is already updated in our portal. Can you guys please log in and check it? Are you able to access new Zoom link for the tomorrow's class? Just log into the portal and click on the join class button.
No, sir. Actually, it is asking today I registered, then I log in.
And daily it's asking email ID and numbers.
No, not now. Today is just now I have updated, man.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We are able to access.
Are you able to access the new Zoom link for the tomorrow's class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have updated that in the portal. I hope all of you know how to join the class from the portal. When you log in into the website, you can see my courses. There you can see RESTful microservices or Spring Boot. 27 batch people can see Spring Boot image, and the new people who join for the only microservices, they can see RESTful service and microservices. Join class option is there. So people can join with the new Zoom link for the tomorrow. Okay, good.
Hello, sir. I have one doubt.
Yeah, if anybody has not enrolled, so link is already changed today. You will not be able to join the class from tomorrow. Complete your enrollment process so that
Hello,
you will
sir.
get the link for that. Yeah.
Sir, we need to follow that naming convention for producers and consumes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those are the no. Yeah, here, whenever we are writing value represents URL pattern. Producers represents in which format this method can produce the output. Consumes represents in which format this method can take the input. These are predefined attributes of this annotation. We can't change them.
Means instead of application, we can write app/XML.
No. This is predefined property.
Okay.
You can't change that. Whatever I am writing here, value you can use anything. This consumes values, produces values, these are predefined. We can't change them. You can't change.
Yeah, sir. Some of the producer they're accepting with the escape characters actually. So how can we generate the escape characters in the JSON?
What is the meaning of escape character?
Escape means a backward slash with double quotes wherever it is there, no?
Here,
Yeah, not there, sir. Just before the double quotes.
Okay.
Just before the double quotes, they are accepting the JSN with the backward slash. Wherever it, all the double quotes.
No, that is, I mean, when you want to represent double quotes within the double quotes, then we will specify the backslash like this. Okay.
Right.
But here it is not required because
Okay.
this is one string and this is one string.
Yeah. If they required in the customization, do we need to exclusively
Yes. If
send
you
with
want, no, in this scenario, that is not required. When you want to represent one double quotes inside the double quote, then you need to go for that black slash. Okay. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Sir, use of response entity.
Response entity, I already told in the class. Here, I'm not using the response entity, I'm returning the object. By default, it will consider the status code as a 200 if the method is executed successfully. In this scenario, I don't want to send the status code as a 200. I want to represent my body and my status code in the response. Then I'm taking response entity. By using response entity, you can customize the status codes which you want to send in the response. Here, I'm using directly customer object. I'm returning. That customer object will be converted to XML or JSON. Response will be sent with the 200 status code. But in this scenario, I don't want to send 200. I want to send 201 status code. Whenever the record is created, I will represent as a 201. So this is the response body and this is the status code. I am creating my own response by using response entity. Request body annotation will represent that this method is expecting customer data. That customer data will come in the request body. So to read the data from the request body and store into this Java object, I'm writing @request body annotation.
Sir, can we take any other data type as a return type of this add customer method, like long or int?
Anything you can take it. You can return one object also. Suppose, for example, the next example, I want to write a method called book ticket. Book ticket method will take passenger data as the input. It will return the ticket data as the output. You can use any return type. You can take any input. So that depends upon your business requirement, right? Now,
Okay,
make my trip want to book a ticket by using IRCTC. Then what make my trip will send to IRCTC? Make my trip will send passenger data to the IRCTC. It can be in the XML format or in the JSON format. What IRCTC will do? IRCTC will book the ticket, will send the ticket data as response to the make my trip in the XML format or JSON format. So method parameter, method return type, it depends upon your requirement.
Sir, actually, if they are sending the data for the XML or JSON or IRCTC app, make my trip, then sir, how to communicate with other those applications?
I did not get your point.
Actually, you are sending the IRCTC sending
1 minute. Two applications will be available. One application is IRCTC. Another application is make my trip. In the IRCTC REST controller will be available. There will be a method called book ticket method. Make my trip application will send the request to book ticket method with the passenger data as input. IRCTC will book the ticket, will return the book data as response to the make my trip. I will develop that example. I will show you that.
Okay. And sir, other question for that, because we are sending for only URL, not for they are providing only for URL, I think, other application.
They will give the URL of their application, which URL you need to access, which REST API URL you need to access. That API URL they will provide you.
If I want to get it, what are the primary key, based on the primary key we need to fetch, then it is not possible.
No. They will give you documentation. I will talk about the Swagger. When I explain the Swagger, you will understand all the details. How one application will communicate with another application. How to understand, because IRCTC developed by one company, Make My Trip is developed by another company. If you Make My Trip want to send a request for IRCTC, they need some information from the IRCTC. That's where Swagger documentation will come into picture.
Actually, I developed the season. I asked because I developed myself.
We will come to that, sir. We'll come to that. Today, our topic is what is consumes, what is produces, what is content type, what is accept header. If anybody having questions on these points, you can ask me. The remaining things I will discuss in the coming classes.
Sir, how can we send content type and accept from browser?
We can't send it from the browser. We can't send it from the browser. That's why we are using Postman for testing purpose.
Sir, I don't want to response as plain text. How to make it a XML or
Right, the logic
no.
XML or
If
JSON.
if your method is returning an object, then only you can take the XML as JSON response. If method is returning string, how can you take XML or JSON? You can't do that, right? String cannot be converted to XML. String
Yes,
cannot
sir.
be converted to JSON. If your method is returning the object, then only client can take XML or JSON as a response.
Sir, if we
Okay.
cannot send from browser, then how other application can send header and content type?
That is programmatically they will make a request, right?
Sir, can you
Huh.
explain more of this?
Arey Baba, you are talking about the future topic that is not discussed yet. Okay. So today you focus on this. Tomorrow, client means make my trip will create the request object. That request it will send. In that request object, programmatically we will set the header, content type, request body, and all that stuff. Programmatically we will create the HTTP request. That HTTP request will send to the server. In that request, we can store all the details. That is the reason I explained the request packet structure. Programmatically, you will create the request packet and you will send the request from one application to another application. That we will discuss in the REST client development. Today, we are understanding resource development. Okay. When I go for the client development, then I will tell you how client will send all the details in the request to the server. These are two actors. Today, our target to develop resource application. In future, we are going to develop the client application. Then I will show you the communication from one application to another application. Got my point?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Good.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Here, sir, to convert object data to XML data, is there mandatory to use @XML root element annotation?
Yes, sir. If you don't use that annotation,
automatically converted.
Yes. No. Spring Boot can do the conversion, but in order to do that conversion, your class should be a JAX-B binding class. You got my point?
Okay, got it. Also, one more question.
Yeah, in the JAX-B, I have already explained how to convert it. So here, if I remove this annotation, this will become a JAX-B class and it will become a normal Java class. It will become a normal Java class. For normal Java classes, we can't perform marshalling and unmarshalling. If we want to perform marshalling and unmarshalling, that class should be a JAX-B binding class. To represent this class as a JAX-B binding class, I have used @XML root element annotation.
Also, how many types of response entity constructor we have?
Can you come again with your question, please?
How many types of constructor have in response entity class?
How many types of constructors we have in the response entity class? There are multiple constructors are available, right? Here, if I take new response entity, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. There are multiple constructors are available. You can send the response. You can customize the response headers also. You can send the raw status code also. You can send only status code. You can send the headers with the status. You can send body with the status, body headers status, body headers and raw status code, like that you can specify. There are 4 or 5 constructors are available.
Okay, means we can pass body, header, and status code.
Yes. Whatever you want, you can send it.
Okay.
Sir,
to customize the response only, we are using response entity.
Sir, how many ways we will send the request and response?
How many ways means?
I mean, now you showed XML and JSON. Other one is text plain. Other than
plain text, that's it. Generally, people will use text data or XML data. Whenever we are sending the body, mostly we will go for JSON or XML data, not other format. Response also, XML response or JSON response or plain text response. These are the 3 mostly used formats in the real time. And nowadays, mainly REST APIs will use JSON, not even XML also.
Sir, if REST API only accept JSON format, so we won't need these things now. Like
suppose my REST API will take only JSON, will provide only JSON. Then you no need to write these consumes and produces. By default, it will take care of JSON.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, somewhere I saw HTML also will get the response.
No, sir. Generally, we don't give HTML responses in the B2B communications, right? B2B communication means interoperable format, XML or JSON.
Yes,
not HTML.
Sir, what is the difference between request body and model attribute?
Request model attribute is used to send the data from controller to UI. Request body annotation to take the data from body to your object. Both are completely different, man. Request body to take the data, whatever client is sending in the body, take the data and store into this object. Model we will use in the normal controller to send the data from controller to UI. Here, today there is no UI, right? In the REST controllers, UI will not be available. REST controller purpose is completely B2B communication. One application will communicate with another application. Only XML or JSON we will use, not the view pages. View is different. That is only controller. It is not controller. It is the REST controller. REST controller means only business to business. That's it. You got my point?
Suppose,
Yes, sir.
suppose if we not specify the media type,
then default JSON.
Okay.
JSON. Yesterday
there
I
is
did
no
not
error.
specify. Yesterday I did not specify anything, right? Yesterday I have written just this method. There is no producers attribute yesterday. Then I send the request. I got the JSON data. When you want to represent multiple values, multiple formats, then only we will go for consumes and producers. Otherwise, if you don't write it also, no problem. My application want to deal with only JSON. Then you no need to write that. You no need to write that. Consumes and producers are not mandatory. These are optional. When you want to support only one format. Got it?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in a request body, we can pass only the DTO class or entity class.
You can pass any, I mean, in the request body, you are not passing object, madam. In the request body, you are passing the data. That data can be binded to any Java object, which is matching with that variables. So whatever the keys you are sending in the body, right? Name, email, gender, these keys should match with your class variables. Then data will be mapped to that.
Yeah, it will convert into the object.
Yes. Right.
Sir, from request body only we can send data to object, or can URL also we can send data to object?
From URL also we can send it. So tomorrow we will understand how to send the data from the URL to the server. That is query parameters, path parameter concept will be available. Tomorrow we will understand that.
Sir, in header type, sir, there are so many options available except content key. The other option, what is the use of this other option?
We'll talk to that, sir. We'll talk about. Today we understood two headers, right? What is the purpose of these two headers? What is the purpose of content type and what is the purpose of accept? Come on.
Input should be which format we are sending,
in which
and
format
output.
we are sending the input, in which format we want the output. That will be represented by content type and accept. The remaining headers are there. We are going to talk about them in the upcoming classes. I have not explained them.
Sir?
Guys, remember one thing. If I give 1 kg of cake, can you eat in the single shot?
No, sir.
Piece by piece you have to take. So slowly we are teaching concept by concept. So if you are asking the doubts on the future topic, I can't discuss that today. So you need to be patient. You need to have some patience.
Yes. Sir, can you show how to access the new URL from tomorrow?
You need to log in into our website. Ashok IT website is available. So if you have enrolled, they will give you access for that website in the course. Suppose if you go to this Ashok IT website, login, you can use the sign in with option. So if you know the credentials of your account, you can log in into that account. Once you log in, you can see my courses. In the my courses, you can see the course which you have purchased. Here join class button will be available. View notes option will be available. When you click on the join class, it will redirect you to the Zoom link. When you click on the view notes, daily class notes will be available.
Okay, sir. Only after purchased only it will show new link, right?
Yes, you need to do the enrollment process. Then only you will get the access for the notes, videos, and Zoom link.
Okay, sir. And I have few of confusions and doubts. Not regarding this session. Can I ask?
Yeah, you can ask. I will stop the recording.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, in my project, my senior developers advised to go through REST and Spring.
Correct.
I'm following this session, REST.
Yep.
From last week, and Spring, I go through your videos on YouTube. I couldn't find some videos after the concept called dependency injection.
Right. So those are some free demo videos we have uploaded. They are not complete course.
Okay, how to access the course?
Yeah, you talk to admin team. Admin team will tell you how to purchase the course. Then you will get the videos of that course.
Okay, once I purchase, I can follow
Yes,
the
you can
videos.
access, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good. Fine, guys. Thank you, all of you. We'll see you in the tomorrow session. Tomorrow we'll understand more about this API development. So remember, tomorrow class will be on the new Zoom link. Anybody who did not complete enrollment, they can't join the class from tomorrow. Complete your enrollment process and attend the class. The people who already enrolled, they have the access in the portal. You can get the join class option there to join the tomorrow's class. Thank you, guys. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow.